Apple just made more money from iPhones than ever before. But here's the crazy part, they're selling fewer phones than they did 5 years ago. Stay with me because what I am about to show you will change how you see every tech company forever. Think about this for a second. In 2015, Apple sold 131 million iPhones. In 2023, they sold around 135 million. That's basically the same number. But their iPhone revenue? It jumped from $155 billion to over $100 billion. How is that even possible? You'd think selling the same amount of phones would mean making the same amount of money, right? Wrong. Apple figured out something that most companies are still trying to copy. They found a way to squeeze more money out of each phone they sell without making people buy more phones. And the smartest part, most people don't even realize it's happening. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how Apple turned the iPhone from just a product into a money-printing machine that keeps generating cash long after you've bought it. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2007. Steve Jobs walks onto a stage and pulls out the first iPhone. Everyone loses their minds. This thing was revolutionary. It had a touchscreen. It played music. You could browse the internet on it. It was a phone, an iPod, and a computer all in one device. Apple's plan back then was simple: make the best phone possible and sell as many as they could. And it worked like crazy. For years, Apple's business model was straightforward. Make a new iPhone every year, make it better than the last one, charge a premium price, and watch people line up outside stores to buy it. From 2007 to 2015, iPhone sales went up and up and up every year. More people bought iPhones every year. Apple made more money. It was a beautiful, simple growth story. But then something changed around 2015 and 2016. Apple hit a wall, not because the iPhone got worse, it was still great, but because the smartphone market got saturated. What does that mean? It means almost everyone who wanted a smartphone already had one. There weren't millions of new customers just waiting to buy their first phone anymore. The market was full. And here's another problem. Phones got really good, like really good. The difference between an iPhone 6 and an iPhone 7 wasn't huge. People started keeping their phones for 3 years instead of 2. Some people kept them for 4 or 5 years. Why upgrade when your current phone works perfectly fine? This was a nightmare scenario for Apple. Their entire business was built on selling more phones every year. But people were buying fewer phones and keeping them longer. Most companies would panic. They'd slash prices. They'd flood the market with cheaper models. They'd do whatever it took to move more units. But Apple, they did something different, something genius. They looked at their business and asked a different question. Instead of how do we sell more phones, they asked how do we make more money from the phones we've already sold. This is where things get interesting. Apple realized something that changed everything. They had over 1 billion iPhones sitting in people's pockets around the world. 1 billion. That's not just 1 billion products. That's 1 billion potential customers who already trust Apple, who already love their iPhones, and who check their phones dozens of times every single day. What if Apple could turn each of those iPhones into a store, a subscription service, a payment system? What if the phone wasn't the product, it was the gateway to dozens of other products? Let me break down exactly how Apple pulled this off. First, they jacked up the prices. And I mean really jacked them up. In 2016, the iPhone 7 started at $649. Just 3 years later, the iPhone 11 Pro Max cost $1,099. That's almost double. Now, you might think this would make people buy fewer iPhones, right? And you'd be right. Sales did slow down. But here's the thing, it didn't matter. Because Apple was making way more money per phone. If you sell 10 phones at $500 each, you make $5,000. But if you sell 8 phones at $1,000 each, you make $8,000. You sold fewer phones but made more money. That's exactly what Apple did. But the price increase was just the beginning. The real genius move came next. Apple looked at all those iPhones out there and realized they could create an entire ecosystem of services that would generate revenue month after month, year after year. This is where Apple really started printing money. Think about it. When you buy an iPhone, you're not just buying a phone, you're buying into an entire system. And Apple makes sure that once you're in that system, you keep paying them over and over again. Let me show you how. Apple Music costs $10.99 a month. Apple TV Plus is $9.99. iCloud storage can range from $0.99 to $9.99 a month depending on how much you need. Apple Fitness Plus is $9.99. Apple News Plus is another $9.99. Apple Arcade for games, $6.99. And then there's Apple One, which bundles some of these together for $19.95 to $37.95 a month. Do the math. If you're paying for just a few of these services, you could easily be giving Apple $30, $40, or $50 every single month. That's $360 to $600 a year, every year, for years. Now multiply that by hundreds of millions of users. Apple's services division, which includes all these subscriptions plus the App Store, brought in over $85 billion in 2023. To put that in perspective, that's more than Nike's entire annual revenue, more than Coca-Cola. Apple's services business alone would be bigger than most Fortune 500 companies. And here's what makes this so brilliant. When you sell someone an iPhone, that's a one-time sale. You make money once, but with services, you make money every single month. It's recurring revenue. It's predictable. It's stable. Investors love this kind of revenue because it doesn't depend on people buying new phones. Even if iPhone sales drop, services keep generating cash. But Apple didn't stop there. They created something even more clever: the App Store tax. Every time you buy an app, Apple takes 30%. Every time you pay for a subscription through an app on your iPhone, Apple takes 30% of that too. This is why companies like Spotify and Epic Games have gone to war with Apple. Because Apple controls the entire platform, and they charge a toll for everything that happens on it. In 2023, the App Store alone generated over $1 trillion in transactions. Apple doesn't get all of that, but even taking 15 to 30% of those transactions means tens of billions of dollars flowing straight into Apple's pockets. And they don't have to make the apps. They don't have to create the content. Developers do all the work. Apple just collects the fee for giving them access to iPhone users. Let's talk about another brilliant move: Apple Pay. Every time you tap your iPhone to pay for something, Apple gets a tiny cut of the transaction. It's a small percentage, usually around 0.15%. But when you're processing billions of transactions, those tiny percentages add up fast. Apple Pay is now used for hundreds of billions of dollars in transactions every year. And again, Apple doesn't have to do much. The infrastructure is already there. The iPhone is already in your pocket. All they had to do was add the feature, and suddenly they were making money every time you buy coffee. Then there's iCloud. Apple gives you 5 gigabytes of storage for free. But here's the thing: 5 gigabytes is nothing. If you take photos and videos on your iPhone, you'll fill that up in a few months. So what do? You pay for more storage. 50 gigabytes for $0.99 a month doesn't sound like much. But when you have over 2 billion active Apple devices, and millions of people are paying that subscription, it adds up to billions in pure profit. Because storage is cheap for Apple. They're not building new factories. They're just renting server space. Now let's talk about accessories. AirPods, Apple Watch, HomePod, MagSafe chargers, cases. These aren't just random products. They're designed to work seamlessly with your iPhone. And once you have an iPhone, buying AirPods makes sense because they connect instantly. Getting an Apple Watch makes sense because it only works with iPhones. Apple has created an ecosystem where every product makes you want to buy another product. AirPods alone have become a business bigger than Spotify, Twitter, and Snapchat combined. Apple doesn't break out exact numbers, but estimates suggest AirPods generate over $15 billion a year. The Apple Watch, another 15 to 20 billion. These are multi-billion-dollar businesses that only exist because of the iPhone. Here's what's really smart about this strategy. Every accessory, every service, every subscription creates what's called switching costs. What does that mean? It means the more you invest in Apple's ecosystem, the harder it is to leave. If you've bought AirPods, an Apple Watch, and you're paying for cloud storage and Apple Music, switching to Android becomes a nightmare. You have to replace your watch. Your AirPods won't work as well. You lose access to your cloud photos unless you download them all. Your music playlist would disappear. It's just easier to stay with Apple. This is called the lock-in effect, and it's one of the most powerful forces in business. Apple has built a golden cage that's so comfortable, most people never want to leave. And even if they're frustrated with the price of the next iPhone, they're so deep in the ecosystem that switching feels impossible. Let's talk numbers because this is where it gets really crazy. In 2015, Apple made about $233 billion in total revenue. iPhone sales were responsible for about $155 billion of that. Services, only about $20 billion. Fast forward to 2023, Apple's total revenue hit $383 billion. iPhone sales were around to $100 billion, but services, they exploded to $85 billion. Do you see what happened? iPhone revenue grew by about 30%, but services revenue grew by over 300%, 4 times faster. And here's the best part for Apple. Services have much higher profit margins than hardware. When Apple sells you an iPhone, they have to pay for the materials, the manufacturing, the shipping, the retail stores. Profit margins on iPhones are good around 38%, but they're limited by physical costs. But with services, the profit margins are insane. Some analysts estimate that Apple's services division has profit margins of 60 to 70%. Because once the infrastructure is built, adding one more subscriber costs almost nothing. It's pure profit. This is why Apple's stock price has gone crazy. It's not because they're selling more phones. It's because Wall Street loves recurring revenue and high-margin services. Apple has transformed from a hardware company into a services company that happens to sell hardware. The iPhone is no longer the product, it's the platform. It's the delivery mechanism for all the profitable stuff. But wait, there's more. Apple has also figured out how to keep squeezing money from older phones. They introduced Apple Trade-in, where you can exchange your old iPhone for credit toward a new one. Sounds nice, right? Here's what's actually happening. Apple takes your old phone, refurbishes it, and sells it in markets like India, Brazil, and other developing countries where people can't afford new iPhones. Or they harvest the components and use them to repair other phones. So they get your old phone for cheap. They make money by reselling it or using its parts. And you go ahead and buy a new expensive phone from them. Apple wins twice. They've also created the iPhone upgrade program. You pay monthly for your iPhone, and after 12 months, you can trade it in for the new model. It sounds convenient, but look at what's really happening. You're never actually owning your phone. You're basically renting it. You pay every month forever. Apple gets guaranteed recurring revenue, and they get your old phone back to resell or refurbish. It's brilliant. They've turned a product into a subscription. Now, let's talk about something that people don't talk about enough: planned obsolescence. Apple has been accused of this for years. What is it? It is when companies design products to become outdated or stop working after a certain period, so you have to buy new ones. Apple got caught slowing down older iPhones with software updates. They said it was to preserve battery life, but it also made phones feel sluggish, pushing people to upgrade. They got sued and had to pay fines. But the damage was done. Millions of people upgraded because their phones felt slow. Even if we give Apple the benefit of the doubt, there's another form of obsolescence that's just as powerful: psychological obsolescence. Every year, Apple releases a new iPhone with some new feature: a better camera, a faster chip, a new color. These improvements are often marginal, but Apple's marketing makes you feel like your 2-year-old phone is ancient. They create a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, even if your phone works perfectly. You feel like you're behind if you don't have the latest model. And then there's the App Store itself, which is another money machine. Apple takes 30% from every paid app download and every in-app purchase. That's enormous. In 2023, consumers spent over $100 billion on the App Store. Apple's cut around $30 billion. That's more profit than most companies make in total revenue. And Apple doesn't create any of those apps. Developers do all the work. Apple just provides the platform and collects the toll. This has led to massive controversies. Companies like Epic Games sued Apple, saying this 30% fee is unfair and anti-competitive. Spotify has complained that Apple charges them 30%, while Apple Music competes directly with them without paying any fees. The European Union has fined Apple billions for anti-competitive practices. But despite all the lawsuits and fines, the App Store keeps printing money. Apple has also gotten into financial services with Apple Card and Apple Pay Later. The Apple Card is a credit card that gives you cash back on Apple purchases. Sounds nice, but Apple makes money from interchange fees every time you use it. Apple Pay Later lets you split purchases into installments. Again, Apple makes money from interest and fees. They're turning the iPhone into a bank. Let's talk about repair costs. Apple has made it incredibly difficult and expensive to repair iPhones outside of official Apple stores. They use proprietary screws. They pair components to specific phones so you can't just swap parts. And they've lobbied against right to repair laws that would make it easier for independent shops to fix phones. Why? Because when your phone breaks, you have to choices pay Apple's high repair fees or just buy a new phone. Either way, Apple wins. There's also Apple Care, their extended warranty service. It costs $149 to $269 depending on the model, and it gives you extra coverage for accidents. Millions of people buy Apple Care because iPhones are expensive and fragile. But here's the thing, insurance and warranty services are incredibly profitable. Most people never use their Apple Care. It's pure profit for Apple. And for those who do use it, Apple controls the repair process and the costs. Now, here's something really interesting. Apple has started designing their own chips, the S series and now M series processors. Why does this matter? Because it gives them complete control over their hardware and software. They're not paying Qualcomm or Intel for processors anymore. They make their own, which saves money and increases profit margins. But more importantly, it allows them to optimize performance and create features that only work on iPhones, making the ecosystem even stickier. The M series chips they developed for iPhones are now in MacBooks and iPads too. So the technology they develop for phones now benefits all their products. It's all connected. If you have an iPhone, getting a MacBook makes sense because they work seamlessly together with features like AirDrop, Handoff, and Universal Clipboard. Apple has created a web of products that all reinforce each other. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. Apple has fundamentally changed what it means to be a technology company. They're not just selling you stuff. They're selling you membership to a club, a lifestyle, an identity. People don't just use iPhones, they identify as iPhone users. That blue text bubble in a message, it's a status symbol. It creates an in-group and an out-group. Green bubbles are Android users. Blue bubbles are iPhone users. Apple has weaponized social psychology to make their products sticky. This tribalism is powerful. Parents buy iPhones for their kids because everyone at school has one. Teenagers beg for iPhones because they don't want to be the outsider with the green bubble. Group chats exclude Android users because the experience is worse. Apple has created social pressure that reinforces their dominance. And here's the thing, this strategy is working beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Apple is now worth over $3 trillion. That's more than the entire GDP of most countries. They have $166 billion in cash sitting in the bank. They make more profit in a quarter than most companies make in a decade. And it's all because they figured out how to make money from iPhones without selling more iPhones. But there's a darker side to the story. Apple's control over the iPhone ecosystem has created monopoly-like power. They control what apps you can install. They control how you pay for things. They control repairs. They control everything. And they use the control to extract maximum revenue from both users and developers. This has led to numerous lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and fines around the world. The European Union has been particularly aggressive. They've forced Apple to allow alternative app stores. They've mandated USB-C charging ports instead of Apple's proprietary Lightning port. They've fined Apple billions for anti-competitive behavior in the US. The Department of Justice has launched antitrust investigations. Apple is fighting legal battles on multiple fronts, all because their control over the iPhone ecosystem has become so dominant that regulators see it as harmful to competition. But even with all these challenges, Apple keeps winning because they've built something that's incredibly hard to compete with. It's not just the products, it's the ecosystem. It's the way everything works together. It's the fact that once you're in, getting out is painful. Think about this. Google tried to compete with Android. Android has more users worldwide than iOS, but Apple makes way more money. Why? Because Android users don't spend money the same way iPhone users do. They don't buy as many apps. They don't subscribe to as many services. The average revenue per user on iOS is 3 to 4 times higher than on Android. Apple has attracted and trained the most valuable customers in the world. Samsung, the biggest Android manufacturer, has tried to copy Apple's ecosystem strategy. They've created Samsung Pay, Samsung Health, Galaxy Buds, Galaxy Watch. But it doesn't work as well because Android is fragmented. There are hundreds of manufacturers making Android phones. Samsung can't control the whole ecosystem the way Apple can. This brings us to the big question. Is what Apple doing good or bad? It depends on who you ask. If you're an Apple shareholder, this is phenomenal. The stock has gone up over 1,000% in the last decade. If you're an iPhone user who loves the ecosystem, it's great. Everything works seamlessly. But if you're a developer paying 30% fees, or a consumer who feels locked in, or a competitor trying to break into the market, Apple's dominance feels oppressive. What's clear is that Apple has written the playbook for modern tech companies. Microsoft is copying it with Xbox Game Pass and Office 365 subscriptions. Amazon is doing it with Prime. Google is doing it with Google One. Everyone has realized that recurring revenue and ecosystem lock-in are the keys to long-term profitability. Apple just did it first and did it best. Let me give you some mind-blowing numbers to wrap your head around this. Apple's services business alone grew from $20 billion in 2015 to $85 billion in 2023. That is an extra $65 billion a year in revenue that didn't exist 8 years ago. To put that in perspective, $65 billion is more than the entire annual revenue of companies like FedEx or American Express. Apple created a business bigger than most Fortune 500 companies just by figuring out how to monetize the phones they already sold. And they're not slowing down. Apple is investing heavily in new services. They're making original TV shows and movies for Apple TV Plus. They're expanding Apple Pay to more countries. They're adding features to Apple Fitness. Plus, they were rumored to be working on a subscription service for hardware. Imagine paying a monthly fee and always having the latest iPhone. Every new service is another revenue stream, another reason to stay in the ecosystem, another lock on the golden cage. The genius of Apple's strategy is that it's self-reinforcing. More services make the ecosystem more valuable. A more valuable ecosystem attracts more users. More users make it more attractive for developers. More developers create better apps. Better apps make the iPhone more valuable. It's a flywheel that keeps spinning faster and faster. And at the center of it all is the rectangular piece of glass and metal in your pocket. The iPhone isn't just a phone anymore. It's the key to Apple's entire empire. So that's how Apple makes billions from iPhones without selling more phones. They raise prices to make more per device. They built an ecosystem of services that generate recurring revenue. They created accessories that only work with iPhones. They made it painful to switch to competitors. They turned the App Store into a toll booth. They got into financial services. They made their own chips. They designed every piece of the puzzle to work together in a way that keeps money flowing into Apple's bank account month after month, year after year. What Apple figured out is something that every business school will teach for decades. The real value isn't in the product, it's in the platform. The iPhone isn't the end goal. It's the beginning. It's the gateway that lets Apple sell you hundreds of other things. And the brilliant part is that most people don't even realize it's happening. We think we're just buying a phone, but we're actually signing up for a relationship with Apple. That will cost us thousands of dollars over the years. This is the new model for tech companies. Sell people a device, then monetize them forever through services, subscriptions, and ecosystem lock-in. Apple didn't invent the strategy, but they perfected it. They built the most profitable business model in the history of consumer technology. And they did it not by selling more phones, but by getting more money from the phones they had already sold. If this blew your mind, click the next video to see how Apple actually manufactures these phones for way less than you think.